Hi, I'm Jeremy. My job is pretty much to introduce the world to sherry, and I've been drinking it for about 10 years. Sherry is probably one of the most misunderstood drinks in the world, but now is a great time to learn about it because there is a huge explosion of Spanish cuisine in London and the rest of the UK, huge interest in Spanish culture and Spanish food, and sherry, because it's such an amazingly broad spectrum of drinks, there's going to be one for everyone. So first of all, we'll start with Fino. Fino is a wine which is unique to the sherry region, and it involves a yeast called flor, which grows on the surface of the barrel. So once the wine is put into a barrel, the yeast from the grape skins actually floats and forms a little fluffy duvet on top of the wine. And this has the effect of protecting it from the atmosphere, so the wine doesn't oxidise, but it also gives it an incredibly yeasty flavour. And importantly, the yeast also eats up any of the sugar and nutrients that's left in the wine to create something that's fiercely dry, probably the driest drink in the world. If you were to age a Fino by the coast, that would be called Manzanilla, but essentially it's the same drink from the same grape, which is Palomino Fino. This is a wine which sometimes takes a little bit of getting used to because it's probably the driest thing you'll ever put in your mouth. And it smells actually quite yeasty, bready, kind of a little bit like Marmite. And when you taste the wine, the first thing you notice is it's savoury. Most wine that we drink is fruity, it's slightly sweet. This is incredibly savoury and also absolutely bone dry. It's because it doesn't have a lot of fruity character, because it's so dry, it's absolutely fantastic with salty snacks, salty foods like olives, things with vinegar like anchovies, just the most versatile wine. So next up is Amontillado. This is actually a very difficult drink to understand, but it's simply an aged Fino. If you leave Fino in the barrel until the yeast eventually eats all the sugar, then it dies. And what happens is the wine starts to oxidise. When the wine oxidises, in the same way as when you cut an apple in half, it goes brown, the wine starts to go brown. But also oxidation causes some fantastic flavours to develop, nuts, dried fruit, kind of dried apricots and dried figs, and just gorgeous, gorgeous flavours. It's still incredibly dry. There was no sugar in the Fino, there's no sugar in the Amontillado. It's incredibly dry, but just starting to develop some really, really interesting nutty flavours. And it, funnily enough, because of that, it goes fantastically well with nuts, with hard cheese like Spanish Manchego, aged Manchego. Absolutely fantastic with Amontillado sherry. So the next wine is an Oloroso. This wine is exactly the same grape as the Finos and Amontillados. It's Palomino Fino, but if you take this wine and put it in the barrel and you add extra alcohol, just a little bit of extra alcohol, it kills all the yeast. Once the yeast has died, the wine ages in contact with the air and it goes brown because it oxidizes. But that oxidation gives it so much incredible complexity. Really sort of juicy dried fruits, figs and apricots. So this is a wine that just goes so well with Spanish ham, lots of different meat dishes, pâtés, just a slight touch of sweetness, but still a gorgeous savoury wine that goes. Chorizo would be a fantastic match with this. And now Oloroso sherry doesn't have to be dry. This is the one sherry style that you would sweeten. And the wine is sweetened with a grape called PX, which we'll come back to. So when you sweeten a sherry, it tends to go a bit darker, a bit browner. And this is a wine that just is so luscious. It just smells of dried raisins and sultanas. Somebody once described this as licking the top of a mahogany piano. It is incredibly sweet, but at the same time, it's like bitterness, really drying on the finish. This wine here is 30 years old, so you can even smell and taste some wood on the wine. Fantastic with salty cheese like Picos de Europa, but also fantastic with chocolate desserts. So now we're on to Palo Cortado. This is the great mystery amongst sherry. And lots of people will tell you that God plays with the wine to create something amazing. It is pretty amazing. But this Palo Cortado is really a very, very light, the most light and elegant style of Oloroso sherry. And in fact, if you started with a Fino grape must and turned it into an Oloroso sherry, you would end up with a Palo Cortado. Just kind of almost like a Amontillado on the nose, but this is just fantastic. This is a wine that goes so well with game. If you're posh, it goes with foie gras. But again, fantastic with cheese, nuts, meaty dishes. Just, I mean, this is everybody's favourite Oloroso sherry. The final wine is PX, or Pedro Jimenez. PX is far easier to say. This is purely a sweetening grape, really. It's a grape that's harvested very, very late when it's dried on the vine, and it's laid out in bunches in the fields on grass mats to dry even further until we produce a raisin, which is crushed and then just fermented to form this thick syrup, just clinging to the glass there. Probably the sweetest wine in the world, almost 50% sugar. Just smells of just dried raisins with a bit of licorice and coffee. Absolutely incredibly intense. Oh, unctuously sweet, really sweet. I mean, one of the things to do with this is pour it onto ice cream, where you know, it'll wow all your friends. But clearly an absolute superstar. So we have probably the driest wine in the world, the sweetest wine in the world, and everything in between. There's pretty much a sherry for everyone.